Alrighty, excellent. Thank you all for logging on this morning to learn more about the concept plans for Apache Boulevard redevelopment. Today, we'll hear from Deputy Director of Human Services, Levon Lamy. We'll also hear from subject matter expert Larry Schmalz. They will share a short project background, and then we'll spend a few minutes on each of the concepts before we open it up for a Q&A. If you think of a question along the way, if you could just type your question in the chat, and then also reference the concept that you are referring to, so that way we know which concept you're referring to, and we'll get to that shortly after. So until then, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Levon. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Levon Lamy. I'm one of the Deputy Human Service Directors, but my specific focus area is on housing. And thank you for coming to the conversation regarding Conceptual Apache Boulevard redevelopment plans and for a public meeting. So just kind of as an overview and a project background, these are multiple properties that are, the city has acquired either through general fund, federal funds, CDBG, home funds, whatever, a combination of funds. And ultimately, we are looking to have these properties redeveloped to meet the larger goal for affordable and workforce housing within the city of Tempe and, bringing more units online. What we're going to be discussing and what Larry will go through in a little bit more detail is that these are concepts for these properties. Some of the properties we do have current development partners with. However, we're still finalizing what that development would look like. And for some of these, we will still be seeking development partners in the future. On the whole, these would be mixed, oh gosh, I apologize. Affordable and/or workforce housing projects. There may be some market rate in here, depending on what the overall of the project looks like. We don't really know yet until we get to all the specifics of these projects nailed down. But we did want to start getting some feedback from the neighborhood and the community on these overall concept plans for these projects, so that we're engaging on the front end of this process. And then once Larry has gone through the individual concepts, we would have some time for a Q&A session. So I will hand it over to Larry Schmalz here in 1 second, but we will be, we have outlined these properties that we're going to be talking about, and we will be using a west to east approach on these parcels and their conceptual redevelopment plans. Larry?
Thank you, Levon. Like I say, my name is Larry Schmalz. I work in the housing department, and I'll be going through these concepts with you, and I do want to welcome you to our meeting. The first concept we have is at Lemon and Dorsey. It's a 1235 East Lemon Street. And basically, currently right now you have a vacant lot. Well, it's not vacant. It's a parking lot that supports light rail and also New School for the Arts. And the concept would be we would take that property, redevelop it into 2 different structures. One basically would be a 5-story L-shaped building that would contain about 68 affordable units. And the other building would basically be the parking structure, which would be utilized to replace the light rail parking and also parking for New School. That's a joint use concept there. The developer there is Art Space, and this is just their initial concept. And you can see on the picture there kind of how everything would be laid out, where the parking is and where the building is. So I think we go to the next slide. Is the Apache HUD concept, which is at 2320 East Apache Boulevard. And currently it's just vacant land. As you can see, it runs from Apache to MacArthur. And the concept there would be a 5-story apartment building with a parking garage adjacent to Apache Boulevard. And on the MacArthur side would be basically 3-story townhomes with a garage parking underneath. And you'll see in the center, there's kind of a break between the projects. There's a sewer line there that is more cost effective. You wouldn't want to be able to move that. And so what we thought would be, it makes an ideal break between the projects, but also gives you where you can have an open space, kind of a little park area. And we were looking at about 250 units in that location. And we do not have a development partner there. We have an RFP out, and that will be coming in shortly. And we'll kind of work through that process to see if we can find an adequate partner that we believe. The next concept.
Larry, I think I might, let me back up one. I think I might have missed a slide. I apologize, folks.
That's okay. Yeah, here's the Dorsey and Apache concept. It's adjacent to the Lemon and Dorsey project, and it's at 1412 East Apache. And that's a 1.3 acre site. And it currently is the park and ride lot. And the plans there would be to redevelop that lot into a 5-story L-shaped building along Apache, and then have a parking garage in the back of the development. And this is more of a affordable live work units for artists. And there'll be a gallery and a commercial space and those type of things. It would be a 4-story parking garage. That would also supply parking for the residential units and also to replace the parking for the light rail. So, okay, Lavon, if we could move on to, okay, here is our final concept, and that's at 2431 East Apache. And basically the city owns a vacant lot there, the triangle piece there by the canal in Apache, and it's adjacent to Watson's Flower. And this is a joint project between Watson's Flower and the city to redevelop both of those sites. In total, it's about 1.64 acres. And you'd have basically a 5-story building along Apache. And then you would also have surface parking, and we would be looking at putting about 106 affordable housing units in that development. And the developer there would be Gorman and Company. So I think that's the last of our concepts.
So that was the last of the concepts that we were reviewing with these specific properties. And I did pull up the chat, so I do see a couple questions that had come in. I wanted to go ahead and get answered. For one of the questions is, what will happen to the park and ride? Is this being abandoned? No, the parking for the park and ride would be required to be replaced within this project. So it would move from, kind of the surface parking that it is now into that structured parking garage that would have to be developed as part of the overall. So there would be the parking for the park and ride and parking for the residents of the units. There is a question that I'm sorry, Brenda, go ahead.
That's okay. Before we hop into questions, there was someone that requested a closed captioning option, and I just wanted to share that we did not have that set up or requested for this meeting prior to the meeting, so apologies, but we will help to make arrangements. If you want to reach out to me, Brenda Clark, Brenda_Clark at tempe.gov, I will be able to assist with that. And I also forgot to say, si hay alguien aquí tiene preguntas en español, si me los pueden mandar por el chat y puedo ayudar a traducir. So apologies, I will hand it back over. I just wanted to share those two messages.
So, and then a question had, one of the questions is, would that be free parking and why not hire? And I apologize, I don't know which concept we were discussing when that question came in, but as far as why not hire, we were evaluating what the concepts were with the heights on this. They could be higher, they could be shorter. Ultimately, it depends on what that final project would come out to look like. So, I mean, it could be we were just exploring the concept here. Oh, you're on mute, Brenda.
Looks like someone has their hand raised up,
Oh.
SMT 510. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is actually David Sokolowski. I was actually wanting to ask about the mixed use in the well, I hope it would be mixed use and also with the market rate and maybe even some luxury housing, because a lot of times we've talked about how mixed projects tend to be, you know, better than just single use projects, whether that's a single income. So we could have just low income property, or you might have just residential, and we really want to have a mix of all incomes and all different types of uses. So, I mean, is that possible to where we could look at making sure that this includes a variety of different incomes and uses?
Yes, we would. With these, there's definitely, you know, along Apache Boulevard, there's definitely mixed use that would be, you know, that would be part of the project. Mixed income is also part of the conversation for the affordable workforce and market rate housing. We don't know what that blend of housing units may or may not be until we get farther into the actual developments themselves. But yes, mixed use, mixed income is absolutely part of the conversation on all of these projects, because, you know, we do need that blend of all housing types to maintain a healthy housing inventory.
Yeah, I have a few concerns about it because like we have Gracie's Village, which is really great. Then we also have Broadway Apartments, and we have Valor on 8th Street. And this becomes segregated housing, right? Because you have each of these different groups of people, and most of them are low income, but they're separated in their own little sections. And so I think it's really important that we have a more, you know, integrated community where people are going to be able to socialize and interact. And we don't want to create like a stigma, you know, associated with a certain type of property. Does that make sense?
No, makes absolute sense.
And then just one last follow-up. I also would really like to see more height and more units per acre, especially near the streetcar line, because that's going to be really important for transit-oriented development. And I just think it's really important for the city to capitalize on that, because you don't really have that many opportunities for infill development at that specific location. And with the streetcar coming online, I think it's really important that we capitalize on that. Thank you.
And it looks like Mary has her hand up. Mary, feel free to go ahead. And thank you for your comment as well, the previous person.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Mary Abeda. I reside in the Gentilly Terrace neighborhood, which is closest to the two West projects that you have presented on off of Dorsey. My concern is regarding, well, I have multiple concerns. The concern I want to bring up right now is the parking situation. So all along Dorsey, you have ASU people who park there, whether they're employees and or students. And how is that going to be addressed in this situation? Secondly, I'm across the street, across Apache, from those two units, and the ASU students and employees both, if you don't address the parking there, they're going to continue to come more into our neighborhood, I believe, because they already are here, even though the city has put the free bus, that 40-foot bus, whatever it's called, the Flash, that comes through our neighborhood to turn around. So my question is regarding, do you have a plan for street parking that currently happens there? Thank you.
We will definitely be making that part of these projects and the concept designs to deal with the parking. In that, I can say we had not gotten to that level of detail in these projects as we were looking at the overall build concepts and looking at that, but the parking is definitely a concern, and that is absolutely going to be part of the conversation that's included moving forward. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like someone with the name iPad has their hand up. Feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
I just wanted to point out to the previous speaker that the Flash bus does not stop in the neighborhood. It will not stop on Spence or Terrace in order to pick up or leave off riders, you would have to use the Mars bus instead. The Mars bus will stop.
Yeah, I understand that. That doesn't stop ASU employees and students from parking in our neighborhood, and they ride their bikes or their skateboards or their what have you to wherever they're trying to get to.
I understand that.
Thank you for those comments. Let me see, does anyone else? I don't see any other hands up, but we'll open up the floor if any other questions.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to put my hand up, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Michael Underhill, and I reside at 1514 East Hudson. And I'd just like to really back the first speaker, I don't know what his name was, SMT 510, about the idea of having, being sure we get mixed use, so we have some commercial things that will serve the rest of the neighborhood also, and that we have mixed income if at all possible, because I just feel that that a project that has only low income people or only people that need affordable or subsidy for their housing, it tends to stigmatize them and doesn't really work to integrate into the neighborhood. And I also think that the city could avoid a lot of the NIMBYism that happened when they tried to do Gracie's, that they ended up reducing the height and things, if we had more mixed use and more mixed income. And I would also argue for more density also, as the speaker said, that to make the best use possible of the investment we've all made, the public has made in the light rail and the streetcar system, especially those sites. I'm addressing mostly to the two sites that are right near the Dorsey light rail stop. I think they should be high. I think we should look at them much higher than 5 stories. And I was participating in a lot of the meetings that former administration had about trying to work up and down Apache, and the vision there was a much higher density. And it seems to me the one place that really does make sense to do some higher buildings is right to get some more density, so that the commercial restaurants and things work well, is right there at the Dorsey stop. So I would argue for more density, mixed use, and mixed income. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, it looks like Escalante Neighborhood has their hand up. Feel free to go ahead.
We actually have a couple questions. Not sure if you want to take them one at a time. I guess I'll start with one which I also saw Matt raise up in the chat. The historic nature of Watson's Flowers. There aren't a lot of buildings in our area that I've said, oh, this is so beautiful, let's keep it. But Watson's Flowers really, I was such a sadness when they got rid of the sign, or I don't know what happened to it. And it's, at least from what I could tell in this presentation, it looks like it's just completely gone in that model. There's no taking into account the historic nature of that building and trying to incorporate it in some way. So I'd appreciate a response to that. And like I say, we do have additional questions.
Thank you.
So the Watson's building and structures themselves we are working with the city's historic preservation, and we are working through what building conditions assessment reports, evaluating what the condition of the buildings, to then be able to evaluate whether, what pieces of those buildings or how that would be integrated into a full-on redevelopment of the site, whether it's partial inclusion on the ground floor, if it's full. I can't really speak to that. Larry, do you have more information on that where you'd be able to give a much better answer than I would? Or is that something we would probably want to get back to folks on?
No, I think right now that's all under evaluation. This is just one concept. I know Gorman is working with Watson's Flower to look at that and study the buildings. That's not city ownership, so we have very little control over what they actually do with those buildings. But they are looking at what part of those structures are historic and what are not. And then they're going to do an evaluation of how they can redevelop, either with those and see what they can do. But we're still very early in the process, and those issues have not been finalized yet.
Thank you. And Escalante, you had another question?
Yes, I was wondering if there's some reference to what exactly is affordable and then what exactly is luxury, of what the current standards are for that.
So the current definition, the definition we offer for affordable housing, and that's the definition that we, the city, use, is housing that is affordable to households that earn 80% of the area median income or below. And when you get into market rate housing, that is at 120% of the area median income or higher. So for example, a family of four, oh my goodness, hold on, please, excuse me, a family of four earning a total gross income of $62,250 would be part of that, the affordable housing range. So that would include everything below that as well, whether it would be some type of voucher subsidy or an income-based rent.
Thank you. And Escalante, thank you for that question. Looks like, did you have another, or if not, we'll move on to Mary.
Go ahead and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, you're up.
Are we allowed to ask questions of the other participants?
Right now, we'd really like to stay on topic. If it is directly related to the topics, please feel free to,
Okay, so my comment is regarding the several, 2 or 3 people who have suggested higher density along Apache to utilize a light rail. And I am wondering how many, Michael and others in Hudson Manor, how frequently are you taking the light rail? And because I don't think it's a very efficient mode of transportation, it doesn't get people quickly to where they need to go. Yes, if they want to go downtown and that's it. But if they want to go beyond downtown, it's not very efficient. For example, when my niece was visiting from out of state at Christmas time, and my brother resides on the other side of town, and she was trying to get back and forth between, she was very flustered with how inefficient it took, how long it took her to get across town and stuff. So I don't really think that the light rail is conducive to people who actually need to get around efficiently. So I don't, I just wonder about how high density. The second question of high density is, I hope the city considers the sociological effects of higher density and what that brings to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Let's see, we weren't quite set up for, a dialogue discussion of a back and forth, but if anyone wants to comment or ask a related question to the panelists, we'll be happy to do that. And I see a couple hands up. It looks like SMT5110, and I'm sorry, I didn't remember your name. If you could go ahead.
Hi, my name is David. I actually serve on the city's transportation commission. So one of the strategies that the city has been using is called transit-oriented development. And the idea is that there are many people that would like to use public transportation, but they may not be able to afford housing in the city. So for example, I think the last estimate was there was something like 64,000 people that commute into downtown Tempe for work at places like State Farm. So higher density near the light rail and the streetcar is really important for me in particular, because I want people to have affordable housing where they will have access to downtown. It's maybe only a couple of miles from the downtown core, and it's right near ASU. So we have students that are having to drive 35 miles into our city because they can't find housing here. And so as our population continues to grow, we have to be able to support them, and we need to be able to build housing near these locations, particularly on the streetcar. So I think that this definitely can support the density. I think that it's really needed. And when we talk about the psychological impact, homelessness and the cost of housing, poverty, that all has a very harsh impact on our community as a whole. We see the homeless people that are sleeping outside. They're at our parks, they're at our bus stops, they're all over our city, and that's really, you know, it's really cruel to leave them out there like that. And we need to find ways to get them into housing as soon as possible. And I think that the quickest way to do that is to start building more housing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, David. Kevin in the chat asked if there is any transitional housing. Feel free to, you know, if you want to add anything onto that, Kevin, feel free to do that.
I just wanted to encourage the higher density in these projects, along with what Michael said. We live in the same neighborhood, so you know, we're just right across Apache from there. And just to add to another comment from Mary is, I was riding light rail quite a bit now that I retired before COVID hit, and I certainly planned, assuming COVID is on the wane, to do that in the future. It's really convenient to get to downtown Tempe or even downtown Phoenix and stuff from here. So yeah, I personally would use light rail and other public transportation. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's see. Let's go ahead and iPad, you're up next.
I guess we don't really want to get into a neighborhood argument, but I support Mary. I think with the low density, I think that was the promise of the city. That's the promise the city made to the neighborhood when it first proposed building the light rail, that it would be low density through this neighborhood in order to preserve the historic low density quality. And I want to don't want to go on with that argument. That probably should be better for a different time. But I just wanted to make sure my initial the question I answered in the chat, asked in the chat, was to say again exactly how each of these properties came into city ownership. I wasn't quite clear on how that happened. So if you could go over that again and speak a little more clearly to each one.
So they're let me see. Okay, here. So the Lemon and Dorsey lot was acquired with, this is a general fund acquisition, as I understand it. I wasn't entirely prepared to get into the complete nitty gritty, but I can go over the high level that I understand on each of these projects or each of these parcels. And this is, as I understand it, was a general fund acquisition for this lot. The Dorsey and Apache concept that is currently the park and ride, that would have been a transit acquisition, which that is where, you know, with transit, we would be replacing the parking for the park and ride. That would have to be replaced and included into this structured parking garage. But transit, you know, transit and transit-oriented development and housing play together and play well, and that works well. So that is one of the deals that absolutely has to take place, is replacing all the park and ride units within the parking structure for the existing facility. The HUD concept properties, this was a combination of federal funds, so community development block grant funding, that acquired these properties. So this has the full strings of HUD attached with the community development block grant funds, and the Apache Canal Watsons, the corner triangle. Larry, I'm going to defer to you. I believe that was a general fund acquisition, but I'm going to stop there.
Actually, that was acquired when light rail was being put into the city. It was used with a combination of city funds and federal funds to do that.
Before we move on to the next question, I believe there's a question I may have missed in the chat. Someone asked if there will be, Pallavi asked, will there be exclusive apartments for seniors too? And I apologize, I don't know if we've covered that.
That right now, the concept that we had been exploring was for mixed use, mixed income properties. We had not been exploring the concept of restricted use units for any of the populations. We were looking to restrict them to the AMIs, but we can definitely put that in as part of the feedback from the community on these concepts.
Okay, thank you. Michael, I believe you may have been next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to respond to the question about light rail. So I do live on Dorsey, and I do live on Hudson, and I do go to the Dorsey stop, and I use the light rail. I fly out of town a lot in my business, so I use light rail all the time. It's fantastic to get to the airport. I agree with you that if you have a particular location across town, sometimes it gets pretty confusing. But I think that my attitude about that is that I lived for a long time ago for a while in Toronto, where they had, you know, layers and layers of public transportation. And I think the streetcar is going to add together with buses together with light rail. You've got to get a kind of a critical mass, and then you can public transit together with things like Uber or kind of things to get you to the final destination can really work well. So I don't know, I commute to ASU. I'm really looking forward to the streetcar, and I do use light rail all the time. I also wanted to answer to kind of talk about the issue of the density. And I agree. I think that the deal the city made when we put light rail, when light rail was added, was that we didn't want to disturb the neighborhoods of one-story single-family detached houses to the north and the south of Apache. But what I'm arguing for is some higher density, and it doesn't have to be all the way along the street, but particularly at the stops along the light rail where you get, and the reason for the high density is support mixed use. And again, I think that the mixed use is so important because to develop a neighborhood where you can walk to a local restaurant, walk to a local shop, walk to even get groceries, et cetera, can only work if there's pockets of density. And it makes a lot of sense to have the pockets of density right around where transit is. And then those facilities that are part of that higher density serve the low density neighborhood adjacent to it. So that would be my kind of argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I'm just going to hop over to some questions that we may have missed in the chat. Apologies. One of the questions was, how do we ensure that units are affordable? So thank you for that question.
So with any of these properties, we are not, the title to the land will not be transitioned. These will be longer term land lease type deals with covenants and restrictions over what the income ranges are for who would be residing in the units, and they will have an annual monitoring requirement for compliance to make sure that the units that are designated for the individual area income ranges are also are being fulfilled. So there will be covenants, there will be restrictions, and there will be monitoring requirements to ensure the continued affordability of the units.
Thank you, Levon. Okay, another question from the chat from Matthew. I believe we covered this, but maybe we can just cover it a little more. He's at 1416 East, or excuse me, at 1416 East Apache. How tall is the parking garage, and how many spaces?
I can answer that one. The parking structure, they're looking at a 4-story parking structure with about 200 spaces in the structure.
Okay, excellent. And let's see. We'll go ahead and go to Nick Weller. We haven't heard from Nick. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Michael said about kind of having some additional density here along the corridor. You know, I live right just one street off of Apache here, right, kind of near Gracie's, and you know, having that density around it, I think, is not really impacted the character of the neighborhood. It's actually quite nice. We can walk. I mean, folks from Gracie's walk their dogs to the neighborhood, and we get to chat with them. there's the thrift shop that's there. That's part of the development. That's wonderful, and we can, walk past that place and get to all kinds of other places along Apache, all of these other storefronts that we like to frequent. So, it does change the look of the neighborhood a bit, but I wouldn't. I'm much more in favor of providing some more affordable housing options, even if it does change the look, because it really doesn't seem to change the character of our neighborhood very much. So, thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. We'll go on to Augie next. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Augie Gastelum, and I do not live in the neighborhood, so I just want to put that out there. And I don't live in Tempe. I live in Mesa. I do work closely with a lot of businesses along Apache Boulevard and with some of the neighborhoods along Apache Boulevard. So I just, I want to say that so that I don't live there. But I just want to make a couple of observations, I think. One is that I know this neighborhood, this area, this part of Tempe is very diverse currently and historically. And so I just want to make an observation that, at least from what I can tell, this conversation currently could use more diversity. So I hope, and I would assume that this is kind of just the beginning of a conversation with the city of Tempe, and that there will be other things happening that will perhaps have more diversity, and maybe even doing some of this in Spanish. I appreciate the fact that you invited those questions in Spanish. So I just wanted to make that comment, and also on the affordability. Just the idea of mixed income, I think is good, but really making sure that that you're not. There's going to be plenty of high income, luxury, unaffordable housing that's developed by private developers. These 4 parcels are really Tempe's last opportunity to have some affordability in this area. This stuff is going to develop. This whole corridor is going to develop over the next 20-ish years, right? And so I think if we think of what this looks like 20 years from now, and think of it from that perspective, it's important so that knowing and understanding that this will be the only affordable areas, places to live in this part of town. All of the homes will be in the neighborhood 15, 20 years from now will likely be very unaffordable for anybody making below the median household income, not even like 80%, but just like at the median household income. So I think keeping that into perspective and not necessarily just looking at it from the right now, but looking at it from a long-term perspective. And for the city, if there's any way for some of that affordability or the affordable housing to be fully accessible by everybody. I know that things that are tied to federal funding, and I'm glad that that conversation happened about like the funds that were used for each of these sites, but a lot of the properties that are tied to federal funding are restricted to not everybody that is low income. And so thinking about how do we create affordable housing for those that don't qualify for the federal low income housing is just important for the city to be considering.
Thank you, Augie. Thanks for that feedback. I know, let's see, Daryl had a question that I missed. Each site needs 100% accessibility, either type A or type B units. This will reduce the segregation, and this reduced segregation is cost effective and meets community needs. I apologize if you want to add to that. My comments are a little hard to get to right now.
Right, this is Daryl Christensen. Like Gorman and Company, they've used this model many times before, that accessibility to be implemented in the design stage right off the get-go. This meets community needs. It's much better and much more affordable than to go back and retrofit with wider doors, lever hardware, roll-in showers, those types of things. Changing the blocking behind the wall for the installation of grab bars down the line, the height of outlets and light switches, those types of things that are really cost zero or very little at the outset. But our suggestion is certainly to do this in 100% of all units in all of these properties, and to not do this and to look at just meeting a fair housing standard of only 5% is very short-sighted. So we would certainly encourage 100% accessibility, because it's not just for folks with disabilities, but for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Okay, the next question is, when will RFPs, sorry, let me see. Sorry, they're a little hard to see. If you can see the question there about when will RFPs come out, if you could address that one till I can get my comments back.
No, but I can address that comment. Excuse me, that piece. So the RFP for the Apache, oh goodness, Lemon and Dorsey, and for the Dorsey and Apache concept has already been issued, and ArtSpace was the successful respondent to that process. They are working through finalizing the concepts of what the elevations and what these buildings would look like. And just I wanted to take that back one step about this being the initial conversations. These are the initial conversations on these concepts. As we move further through these projects and through the developments, there will be many, many more meetings with much more in-depth information. We're really seeking feedback on these specific concepts, the heights, the densities, the mixed income desire for these properties, affordable and workforce. This HUD Apache concept, that RFP is out now, that for developers to respond for what they would be able to do on the site. Again, these are concepts in order to get the feedback from the neighborhood and the community of, theoretically what this concept is and what this development could look like. The Watson's Canal, or the Apache Canal and Watson's Flower concept, again, the city's parcel, which is that little triangle, that RFP was already issued. The developer that was successful in that competitive process was Gorman and Company. And again, we're working through the final deal points on that and what the overall building would look like. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag as to when these, when the RFPs are out and when the final stages would be moving forward with these 4 additional meetings.
Thank you. Comments are back up and running, so thanks for your patience with that. Looks like we had a couple of other comments that came in. Matt wanted to ask a question if there was time, and also Mary. So we'll do Matt and then followed by Mary. So go ahead.
Thanks. First, I just wanted to tell you guys that I really appreciate that we have the chance to comment on these really early. And I know sometimes it can seem like it's a little frustrating because not all the information's there, but it's great that we get in on, a really early stage. I wanted to make the comment, when it comes to density and what the neighborhoods were promised and everything, if we go back to the urban core master plan that was being worked on, there was a stage before it all kind of went away where we were looking at everything alongside the cultural resource neighborhoods along Apache, and looking at them lot by lot and figuring out what the density should be. And so it really makes sense to put a lot of density where it makes sense to put that density. So for instance, at the corner of Apache and McClintock is a good example. Against the cultural resource neighborhoods like our neighborhood of Hudson Manor, we don't want a 5 or 6 story building right against, single family houses. So when we talk about density and we talk about, how to develop, we need to take it by a parcel to parcel kind of condition. And that's going to be really important with all of these. And that's why I was asking about the height of the parking garage, because it's actually kitty corner to single family houses directly to the northeast. So those kinds of things we need to be really sensitive about. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we've got two developments that you showed along Dorsey. And one of the things that our neighborhood and our area have been trying to get the city to put funding towards are having north-south running bike lanes, really protected bike kind of lanes along non-arterial streets, in particular Smith and Dorsey. And those are really needed because McClintock just isn't a really safe, biking lane, and rural isn't, is not for bikes at all. So we need these in between streets that would allow us to be able to get to the lake, for instance, and connect our parks and our neighborhoods. Because there are two developments going on right along Dorsey, we really need to make sure that the city is forcing those developments to implement what will allow those really heavily protected bike lanes and shaded bike lanes to go in on those on that street. So there's several of us here today in this meeting, and there'll be more of us in the late afternoon meeting from the Citizens for Vibrant Apache Corridor, and we're going to be hitting on this really hard until we get it, because we've been asking for it for 20 years and it hasn't happened yet. So now with these developments going in, if these developments go in and the bike lanes don't go in with them, it's never going to happen. So it's got to be now or never. We got to have them in now. So those are my comments. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hear from us.
Thank you for your feedback. I have some hands up. I don't know if they were up from previous times, but I see iPad hand up, Nick Weller and Augie. So we'll do iPad first.
I didn't have my hand up. I don't know how it got.
Oh, okay. I'll go ahead and lower that. Maybe that was from before. And Augie, did you want to say anything, or was that from before?
Yep, that was still up. I was just trying to put my hand down.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. You're down now.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, excellent. We are coming up with just a few minutes left on this meeting tonight, and I want to open it up for any final questions that you all may have. Okay, excellent.
Yes, my question that from the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. Let me pull that up. Okay, Mary, are you talking about the lower level retail space along Apache, such as the Metro has remained vacant? Why is it unaffordable?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lower level retail space along Apache, such as Metro has. I can't speak to why the lower level space on Apache or Metro has remained available. I don't. Larry, do you have any information on that?
Basically, that's the owner's issue. I don't know if it's their choice. I mean, they can activate that space if they want. That wasn't their primary objective when they did the development, but they were required to put in that space. We can really not force them to activate that space, but hopefully as things progress and Apache develops, they will start activating more of that space so it will become utilized.
I guess my question is, that was one example, but even the new development that the Park Place and the other development that the district folks have across Apache at Terrace, so much of the retail space along Apache on the lower level has remained vacant. And is it due because it's unaffordable for small business or mom and pop, etc.?
Thank you, Mary. That's it seems we may have to discuss that separately. I don't know if we have a concrete answer for that, but we can definitely connect you with the correct person who might be able to assist if you want to reach out to me personally afterwards. But thank you for that question. And it looks like David has a question as well. Can the city look at price, park, and ride?
Park and ride.
David, if you want to elaborate, please do.
There's actually other park and rides. There's actually one in Mesa right on Sycamore and Main Street. I kind of wish that they would help, partner with us to develop that. And there's also a park and ride at Price and the 101 freeway that is, I think it's really large. And I mean, it seems like it could support a significant number of units.
Thank you, David. Okay, if I missed anyone in the chat, can you please feel free to type that again, or just copy and paste it so we can make sure to get you. And we'll go ahead and open up the floor again for any final questions. Okay, we'll give it a couple minutes for the chat, but while we're waiting for that, I just want to remind you all that we are collecting the official public comment at tempe.gov/forum. So please make sure to share your feedback. We will capture and save this chat of today's meeting, but we want to make sure to capture it in the official record at tempe.gov/forum. You're also welcome to email, if we can go back to the contact slide on the last slide. You can reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to get you in touch with the correct person and the correct answer. We will have a meeting tonight at 6 p.m. online on Zoom. So invite your friends. It sounds like we have a big group already coming, so feel free to share with others. And Daryl has a good question. Thank you for that question, Daryl. He wants to know what are the next steps and timelines. So I will hand that over to probably Levon, I'm thinking.
So, I mean, each of these projects will have its own timeline and next steps dependent upon the project itself. So with, and just because I've got it on the screen, so with the Watson's Flowers, the conditions assessment and the work along with the current Watson's building needs to be completed in order to figure out exactly what that redevelopment would look like, what will be incorporated, and moving that forward. So the next steps are definitely that as these projects are moving forward, there would be more information put out on the specific projects with the Apache HUD parcels, that RFP process is in play. And after that closes, those responses would be reviewed would be reviewed, and then moving into the Dorsey projects, those are, we'll be having more community meetings with that as we get through the final elevation designs and pushing that out. So again, each one is going to have its own timeline and next steps. It's really dependent upon the individual project.
Thank you, Levon. And also early April, you'll be able to see the public input summary that will highlight all the public input that has been done on this project in relation to reaching out to various communities, businesses, nonprofit groups, and all of that. So it'll be all outlined in addition to all the comments that we received. So please feel free to do share that. And if there are no further questions, I would like to go ahead and thank you all for taking your time this morning. This will be recorded and shared online on the tempe.gov/housing page. So please do visit that. Comment will be open through April 1. Thank you again. This concludes the meeting.